Hello and welcome. Today we're turning our attention to a small industrial town in Sweden called Fagersta.
Right. Not exactly a place you'd expect to be a musical epicenter.
Not at all, but it is the birthplace of a musical phenomenon that has somehow managed to sustain this incredibly specific high-octane energy for, well, for over 3 decades now.
We are, of course, talking about the Hives.
Exactly. You probably know them for the black and white tuxedos, the high kicks, that relentless garage rock sound. But there's a much more complex story here.
Oh, absolutely. It involves legal battles, a completely fictitious sixth member, and a career that stretches all the way from their formation in 1993 right up through the release of their 2025 album.
It's a fascinating case study in, I think, consistency and mythology.
It really is. When you look at rock history, bands so often change their look or they evolve their sound to chase whatever trend is happening.
Sure, it's a survival tactic.
Right. But the Hives did something different. They created a universe. It's almost, a cartoonish but deadly serious rock and roll world, and they have stayed in character for over 30 years.
So that's really our goal here today, to unpack how a group of friends from this small town ended up becoming one of the most enduring live acts in the world. We're going to try and dissect that unique blend of punk energy and disciplined showmanship.
And how they did it without ever breaking character. We have a lot of material to get through, covering their entire discography, the business dealings that almost broke them, and their recent resurgence.
So let's start at the very beginning. The timeline kicks off in 1993. The core of the band, it's really built around two brothers, Pelle Almqvist.
Who the world knows as Howlin Pelle.
Right, and his brother, Nicholas Almqvist, who goes by Nicholas Arson.
That brotherly dynamic is just so vital to the whole story. They formed the band in Fagersta, Västmanland, and then recruited 3 friends to round out the lineup.
And who were they?
You had Michael Carlson, who took the stage name Vigilante Karlstrom, then Matthias Bernvall, who became Dr. Matt Destruction on bass.
Dr. Matt Destruction, great name.
Isn't it? And on drums, Christian Gran, known as Chris Dangerous.
And it's worth pointing out right away, I think, that this specific lineup, these 5 guys, remained completely unchanged for 20 years.
20 years, from 1993 all the way to 2013. In the music industry, that level of stability is it's incredibly rare.
The names themselves really set the tone from the get-go. They sound like characters from a comic book or maybe wrestling heels.
Yeah, totally. But the name of the band itself, the Hives, that actually comes from a pretty funny misunderstanding. It wasn't, some intentional reference to a skin condition.
Okay, so how did that happen? It seems like a strange choice.
It was essentially a translation error. The story goes that the drummer, Chris Dangerous, he looked up the word hives in a dictionary.
Just randomly looking for words.
Apparently, and he pitched it to the band. But based on his description, the rest of them completely misunderstood what the condition actually was. They had no idea it meant urticaria, a skin rash.
So they weren't thinking itchy welts.
Not at all. They were under the impression that hives was a lethal, highly contagious disease.
Which, for a young punk band, is a much better concept.
It's a perfect concept. And that detail is so crucial. Howlin Pelle later explained that they wanted to spread like a deadly disease across the land. It just fits their aggressive style perfectly, even if the medical definition is a bit less threatening.
And where did that come from?
That was a later addition. They said they realized that all the good band names are plurals. They just stuck the on the front to make it sound right.
It speaks to their ambition, though. Even as teenagers in Fagersta, they were already thinking about spreading across the land like a disease.
Absolutely. Their first recording was a demo in 1994 called Sounds Like Sushi.
Sounds like sushi. Okay.
Yeah. And by 1995, they'd signed with Burning Heart Records, which was a pretty significant independent Swedish label at the time. This led to their debut EP, Oh Lord, When, How, in 1996.
And that was followed pretty quickly by their first full-length album, right?
It was. Barely Legal came out in 1997.
Barely Legal is such a great title for a debut punk album. And on that record, you can already hear those influences taking shape.
For sure. They were pulling from bands like Rancid, The Dead Kennedys, New Bomb Turks. There's also a really strong connection there to another Scandinavian band, Turbonegro. It's just fast, it's loud, and it's very, very direct.
And that debut album actually ended up having some cinematic legs to it later on.
It did. The track The Stomp from Barely Legal was featured years later on the soundtrack for the Guy Ritchie film rock and rolla.
Which shows that even their earliest material had that kind of punchy cinematic quality that directors would gravitate toward.
But the really crucial business move for them happened in 1998. They released their second EP, aka IDIOT, and in that same year, Burning Heart Records signed a distribution deal with Epitaph Records.
And that's a massive connection. I mean, Epitaph is legendary in the punk world.
It was huge. That deal opened the door for their music to be distributed in the United States. It basically laid all the groundwork for what was about to happen next.
Which was the album that really changed everything for them.
Veni Vidi Vicious.
So this album comes out in April of 2000, and it's the one that just defines their breakthrough. The band had a very specific description for its sound, didn't they?
They did. They called it a velvet glove with brass knuckles.
That's a very precise description. It suggests something stylish and sophisticated on the surface, but absolutely brutal underneath.
It's perfect. That album contains the song that is arguably their signature anthem. Hate to say I told you so.
Oh, yeah. Even if you have no idea who the Hives are, you know that guitar riff. It's inescapable.
But it wasn't just that one song. You had Main Offender, Die, All Right, Supply and Demand. The whole album was packed with these short, sharp shocks of energy.
And the cultural saturation of those songs was just immense.
It was. Hate to say I told you so. Ended up on the soundtrack for the first Spider-Man movie. It was in the video game Forza Horizon.
Right, and Main Offender was a big track in the Rock Band game series.
Yeah, Die All Right. It was also downloadable content for Rock Band. They were embedding themselves into the entire pop culture landscape through video games and movies, which is how a huge number of young people were discovering music in the early 2000s.
But their success in the UK had a very specific catalyst, didn't it? It involved a pretty big name in the industry.
It did. Alan McGee. He's a very influential executive, the man who discovered Oasis.
So he had a good year.
He had a great year. He saw the video for Hate to Say I Told You So on German television and just decided on the spot that he had to sign them to his new label, Pop Tones.
And what did he do with them?
He put together a compilation in 2001 called Your New Favorite Band.
A pretty bold title.
Very bold, but it worked. That compilation was the match that lit the fire in the UK. It went all the way to number 7 on the UK album charts.
And that success, it forced a re-release of the singles from Veni Vidi Vicious.
Exactly. Hate to Say I Told You So and Man Offender both charted in the UK Top 30 when they were re-released. The album itself was also properly released in the US around this time.
And this was all happening right as the whole garage rock revival was exploding globally?
Perfect timing. You had bands like The Strokes, The White Stripes, The Vines. They were all getting huge. The Hives fit perfectly into that narrative, but they looked different.
That visual identity was the key differentiator, wasn't it?
Absolutely. While all the other garage rock bands were going for this kind of messy, denim and leather, cool but casual look, the Hives were matching black and white tuxedos.
It made them look like a unit. It signaled that this was a show, a performance, not just some guys hanging out and playing instruments.
It was incredibly smart branding. And with that massive success, of course, the major labels came calling.
And this is where the business side of things gets really, really intense for them. They ended up signing a deal with Universal Music that was reported to be worth $10 million.
A staggering amount of money for a garage punk band from Sweden.
Yeah.
It was a full-on bidding war.
But it wasn't a smooth transition into the big leagues. There was a pretty significant controversy that bubbled up with their previous labels.
A huge controversy. It turns out that Epitaph Records had sold the U.S. rights to the Hives material to Warner Bros. Records.
Okay.
The problem was they allegedly did this without informing the band members at all.
That seems like a major oversight.
It led to a very serious conflict. The labels claimed the band was still under contract for one more album. The Hives disagreed completely. It resulted in a lawsuit being filed against the band.
Wow. So at the height of their breakout success, they're being sued.
Exactly. It was eventually settled out of court, but it just goes to show the level of tug of war that was happening over them. And they weren't just an indie band anymore. They were a high-value commercial entity.
This seems like a good time to pivot to one of the most unique aspects of the Hives, which is the songwriting credit.
Ah, yes. Randy Fitzsimmons.
If you look at the liner notes of their albums, the songs are all credited to a man named Randy Fitzsimmons. The band claims he's their manager, the man who discovered them, an honorary 6th member, and they maintain this story with absolute straight faces.
It is a brilliant piece of theater. According to the band's official lore, Randy Fitzsimmons writes all the music and manages their entire career.
So who is he really?
In reality, Randy Fitzsimmons is a registered pseudonym for the guitarist, Nicholas Almqvist Nicholas Arson.
So the guitarist is writing the songs, but he's created this other persona to credit them to.
Exactly. And they even hide little Easter eggs about it for the fans.
Like what?
On the back cover of the Tyrannosaurus Hives album, if you look closely at the picture of the band, there's a hidden sixth pair of legs.
Implying Randy is there in the photo with them, just out of frame.
Precisely. It's all part of the game. And there's a psychological angle to this as well, I think.
What do you mean?
By inventing this separate figure who writes the songs and manages the band, they effectively separate the creative ego from the performance. If the songs are written by Randy, then the five guys on stage are just the messengers, the performers.
So it could help avoid the internal conflicts about songwriting credits and royalties that have destroyed so many other bands.
I think so. It creates this unified front. It's the Hives versus the world, and they're all led by this mysterious, unseen figure. It's a genius move.
So let's move forward to 2004. They have the major label money, they have the fame, and now it's time to release their third album, Tyrannosaurus Hives. This was the moment to really consolidate that success.
And they absolutely did. They just won Best International Band and Best Dressed Band at the NME Awards in 2003. They were on top of the world.
So they went back to Fagersta to record this album.
Yes, back to their roots. And the lead single, Walk Idiot Walk, was an immediate hit. It debuted at number 13 on the UK singles charts. They also had other key tracks like Two Timing Touch and Broken Bones and a little more for Little You.
And the critical reception, particularly in their home country, was just overwhelming, wasn't it?
It was a clean sweep. In 2005, they dominated the Swedish Grammis Awards. They won Artist of the Year, Rock Group of the Year, Album of the Year, and Producer of the Year. They were undeniably the biggest rock act to come out of Sweden at that time.
And they continued to permeate pop culture through other channels as well.
Oh, definitely. The video game syncs kept coming. Tracks from Tyrannosaurus Hives like B is for Brutus and Uptight were in Gran Turismo 4. No pun intended was in the snowboarding game SSX on tour. They were becoming the default soundtrack for anything high energy.
Their next phase, around 2007, marked a bit of an evolution for them. They released the Black and White album, and this one wasn't just recorded in Sweden.
No, they broadened their horizons. They went to Oxford, Mississippi. They went to Miami. And the collaborations on this record are honestly pretty surprising.
This is where they really started to experiment with their sound.
For sure. They worked with the hip-hop producer Timbaland.
Timbaland, that is an unexpected pairing.
Very. They collaborated on a track called Throw It On Me, which appeared on Timbaland's huge album, Shock Value. And they also collaborated with Pharrell Williams' group, NERD.
On the Seeing Sounds album, right?
That's the one. And what's interesting there is that on the NERD track, they're credited by their real names, not their stage names. A rare peek behind the curtain.
And we can't forget the commercial success of the single Tick Tick Boom from the Black and White album. That song was absolutely everywhere.
It was a sync licensing juggernaut. It was in films like Jumper, Taken, MacGruber, Get Smart. It was the theme for a WWE pay-per-view. It was in the Madden NFL video game. It's one of those songs that even if you don't know who sings it, you've definitely heard it in a movie trailer or a commercial.
And their collaborations just got more and more eclectic.
They did. They even recorded a song for the Cartoon Network called Fall is Just Something Grown-Ups Invented.
And then, in a completely different direction, they did a Christmas duet with Cyndi Lauper.
Yes, a Christmas duel in 2008. It just shows a real willingness to be playful. They aren't so precious about their punk credibility that they won't work with a pop legend like Cyndi Lauper or a hip-hop producer like Timbaland. It just expands their universe.
There's another interesting collaboration around this time with Jack White.
Yeah, sort of trade. Jack White apparently recorded the sound of his footsteps for the Hives to use on a track, and in return, Pelle recorded some hand claps for the Raconteurs.
It shows the mutual respect they had within that scene. So after this whole major label whirlwind, they decided to take back control.
They did. In 2012, they released Lex Hives, but this time they did it on their own label, Disc Hives.
That's a classic move for a veteran band. Get out of the major label system and do it yourself.
Exactly. They self-produced the 12 main tracks on Lex Hives. They did bring in an outside gun for some bonus tracks, though.
And who was that?
Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age. He produced 2 of the bonus tracks, which established a relationship that would become pretty important later on.
The lead single from that album was Go Right Ahead. I remember they performed that one on Jimmy Kimmel Live.
And they kept getting those syncs. A song from that era, come on, was used as the theme for the Xbox One console launch commercials.
But shortly after this era, the band faced its first, and to date, only major lineup change.
Yes, in 2013, Dr. Matt Destruction, the bassist who had been there since the very beginning in 1993, had to retire due to health reasons. It was really the end of an era for the band.
A 20-year run with the same five guys is remarkable, so how did they replace him?
They brought in Johan Gustafsson, who was formerly the bassist for another Swedish band called Randy. And of course, he needed a Hives-style stage name.
Of course. And what did he choose?
He took on the name the Johan and Only.
The Johan and Only. That fits perfectly into their naming convention.
It really does. And even though the lineup changed for the first time, the core philosophy of the band, especially their live performance, remained completely consistent.
And their live show is legendary. Spin magazine ranked them as one of the best live bands of all time.
They are just a force of nature on stage. And it's all built on this idea of engagement. There's a quote from the drummer, Chris Dangerous, about their approach to the audience.
What does he say?
He said, "There are so many bands out there that don't say a word to the crowd. I don't get it. They don't even look at the audience, and that's ridiculous." That just sums up their entire ethos. They are there to entertain.
And Howlin Pelle has his own take on it. He describes the live show as an energy exchange.
Right. He says the body gets tired, but the soul feels better. It's not just draining for him, it's restorative.
And we have to talk about the Ninja Roadies.
Yes. You cannot talk about a Hives live show without mentioning the Ninja Roadies.
Please, explain the Ninja Roadies for anyone who hasn't seen them live.
There's a very specific detail about their live production. When there are extra percussion parts that need to be played live, like a tambourine or extra cymbals, they're performed by the band's road crew.
Who are dressed head to toe as ninjas.
Exactly. It just adds to the theatricality.
Yep.
It keeps the visual language completely consistent. You have the band in their tuxedos, and their support staff are silent ninjas. It's brilliant.
And the uniforms themselves, the black and white tuxedos, what's the reason for that?
Pelle has said it's because it makes us look like we belong together. It removes individuality in favor of the collective. They are the Hives, a single unit.
So fast forward to 2020. The pandemic hits, and obviously live touring comes to a screeching halt. But the Hives didn't just sit around.
No, they came up with a very clever idea called the world's first worldwide web world tour in January of 2021.
How did that work?
It was a really smart adaptation. Instead of just doing one generic live stream for the whole world, they played multiple live stream sets that were tailored to specific cities.
So they would do like a Berlin show.
A Berlin show, a London show, a New York show, a Sydney show. And they'd broadcast them at specific friendly times for those time zones and tailor the onstage banter and interaction to those specific audiences. It was a way to simulate the feeling of a real tour while everyone was stuck in lockdown.
That's a great idea. Moving into the more recent era, the band went quite a long time without a new album after Lex Hives.
A very long time. The gap was over a decade. But in 2023, they launched a marketing campaign to announce their return that was just perfectly on brand for them.
The protest sign.
Protest signs.
Mm-hmm.
In January 2023, photos started appearing of Howlin Pelle holding these cardboard protest signs on Hollywood Boulevard.
And what did they say?
Things like the Hives must album now.
Yeah.
And my favorite, honk if you want a new The Hives album.
He was literally protesting his own band's lack of output.
He was. And then the other band members, Arson, Karlstrom, Dangerous, started showing up in photos joining the protest. It generated a ton of buzz online, and it humorously acknowledged how long the fans had been waiting.
And it all culminated in the announcement of their 6th studio album.
The Death of Randy Fitzsimmons, which was released in August of 2023.
The title itself suggests a pretty major shift in the band's mythology. If Randy is dead, who's writing the songs now?
It was a great hook. And the album was a real return to form. The lead single was a track called Bogus Operandi, which actually won the Best Bizarre Award at the Berlin Music Video Awards.
And they didn't forget their history. There was a nice nod to the original lineup in one of the videos.
There was. The former bassist, Dr. Matt Destruction, made a cameo in the video for the single Countdown to Shutdown. He's seen playing an office worker.
A great little Easter egg for the longtime fans. And they toured that album expensively.
They did, including a huge run supporting the Arctic Monkeys on their stadium tour in the UK and Ireland.
But they didn't wait another 10 years for the next one. Which brings us up to their more recent work, looking at their career through early 2026. They released another album in 2025.
Yes, they kept the momentum going. On August 29, 2025, they released The Hives Forever. Forever the Hives.
And who was behind the boards for this one?
It was produced by Pelle Gunnerfelt, who they've worked with for years, but also with a very interesting co-producer, Mike D,
Mike D. from the Beastie
the
Boys.
very same. And Josh Holm came back, this time in an advisory role.
That's a serious production team. And where did they record it?
A very Swedish combination of places. They used studios owned by the rapper Young Lean and also Benny Anderson from ABA.
From the Beastie Boys and ABA to Young Lean. That is an incredibly diverse mix of influences.
It really is. The singles from that 2025 album were Enough is Enough, Paint a Picture, and Legalize Living. It really feels like they entered a new, prolific phase.
And following that release, they embarked on another world tour, proving that even after more than 30 years, the machine just does not stop.
It's truly remarkable when you think about it. They went from a simple misunderstanding of a word in a dictionary in a small industrial town to working with members of the Beastie Boys and ABA, all while keeping the same suits and the same unstoppable energy.
So let's try and sum up the legacy here. We've tracked them from 1993 all the way up to early 2026. They survived the garage rock revival when so many of their peers just faded away. They survived major label lawsuits. They survived the entire shift from CDs to streaming to viral marketing. What's the secret?
I think their legacy is really about the triumph of a strong concept. They realized very early on that to be a great rock band, you need more than just good songs. You need an identity.
And they built one of the strongest identities in music.
By sticking to that black and white visual scheme, the mythology of Randy Fitzsimmons, and that unwavering high-energy performance style, they became instantly recognizable and, in a way, timeless. They successfully integrated themselves into every era of music consumption without ever really changing who they fundamentally were.
And that brings us back to the bigger question about the Randy Fitzsimmons persona. We talked about it earlier, but reflecting on their entire career, what does it really say about band dynamics?
It really does raise a provocative thought. Perhaps the creation of a fictional leader, this sixth member, who you can either credit for success or blame for failures, is the secret to longevity. It allows the actual members of the band to survive the ego clashes and the creative arguments that destroy so many other groups.
So Randy Fitzsimmons isn't just a gimmick, he's a buffer, a lightning rod.
He's a unique survival mechanism. If the decisions are all coming from Randy, the members can remain a united front. It's a fascinating psychological trick that helped turn a group of friends into a global institution that's lasted for more than 3 decades.
A fascinating model for artistic survival. We'll leave you with that thought to ponder.
Thanks for listening.